Hey, this is Doug Giles with Warriors and Wildmen. I got my good buddy Rich here. Rich, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's happening, Doug? It's good to be back with you here on Warriors and Wildmen, bringing the thunder.
Yeah, it looks like you and Annie had a great vacation riding the bikes up at Sturgis. Amazing looking place. I was very jealous. Had I not been to Africa like a week or two prior, I'd probably be in the fetal position, curled up, sucking my big thumb.
Yeah.
With jealous rage.
Seven states, 3,200 miles on
you know
motorcycle. It was awesome.
You know what happens when I get in jealous rage is I bomb you on Facebook and say mean things about you. But no, it looks great, man. That pass, what was it called? The Eye of the Needle or something like that?
Yeah.
Amazing looking turf.
Over 300 turns in 17 miles. It's an amazing, beautiful place. It was awesome. Great vacation. Vacation.
Did you take the training wheels off the bike, or did you keep them on?
No, I just use my bags for that. When I lean over, I just grind them. Keeps the bike up.
You ought to put wheels on the bags. That'll keep it afloat and stuff.
Well, they have those. They're called trikes.
That's what my old skinny legs would need, a big old trike, man.
When I get older, I'm getting
have a horn on the front. Hey, let's had a lot of dicey stuff happen, obviously, this weekend, talking about the riots in Charlottesville over this white supremacist group, Unite the Right, which I've never heard of, and I'm all over the internet, man. And I lean politically right as a conservative with some libertarian bents towards me. Never heard of Unite the Right, but anyway, they rock up, and they had a permit to do a protest about removing the Robert E. Lee statue there in Charlottesville, and lo and behold, there were anti-quote-unquote fascists that showed up, and you know this, our listeners know this, it was a full-on melee. The thing that I want to parlay today in our Warriors and Wildmen podcast and get your take on it, because we're Christians. I know people don't think that I am because I have the mouth of a stevedore, and some of my Catholic buddies think I have the soul of a heretic, and I smoke cigars. So, you know, some of my evangelical compadres, sometimes they get twisted around the axle regarding my lifestyle, but I believe Christ crucified on my behalf, and my faith in him washes me white as snow, as the song says. So as a Christian, Rich, you're a pastor. I used to be. I'm still a believer. I got to ask you, man, does the New Testament, because a lot of these guys supposedly on the right, they think, let me rephrase that. A lot of these protesters, these Klans guys, these neo-Nazis, these white supremacists, a lot of them confess to be believers. Can you be a New Testament Christian and support racism? Go.
Negative.
Well, these guys quote the Bible, man.
Oh,
they're flinging Jesus around like a drunk midget at a Molly Hatchet concert.
Did you want more than that, Doug? Because we could break it down. All right, here's the deal.
Break it down, buddy.
There are only two races. Let me throw that out there. Regardless of what you fill out on your school application or your IRS when you're doing your taxes, there's only two races. There's the race of Adam. This is Bible stuff. The race of Adam, the fallen nature, and then the race of those that are born-again Christians. That's the new nature. So you have one race, which is the Adamic race, and then you have the other race, which are Christians that are born again. The Bible says that Christ is the last Adam, not the second, because there's not another one. He's the last. The first Adam screwed it up. The last Adam got it right. So you have every person who lives according to the fallen nature and every person who's born again. That's the two races. And the Bible makes it clear there's neither Jew nor Gentile. We are all, look, man, somebody asked me one day, after a softball game, they said, hey, man, you think Jesus is black? I said, I think Jesus is Jewish. And they said, yeah, but you think he's black? Because I heard he's black. And somebody said, no, this and that, and then the paintings and all this garbage. And I said, hey, let me tell you the important thing about Jesus and color. His blood is red. That's the thing that matters. That's where I'm at on racism. That's what the Bible says. It's just, we're one race, man. We're one people. In heaven, we're going to be every nation, every tribe, every tongue. It doesn't say there's going to be a group in second place.
Yeah, Christ definitely shot the racial divides down in his ministry. You can't go through, and I'm talking, anybody with a lick of sense, IQ of 50, 3 teeth. I'm talking about a George Strait concert front row. Anybody with a lick of sense who can read, if they do just a cursory glance of the New Testament and they call themselves a Christian, they can't walk away from that thinking that Jesus was this bigoted man that was spewing racial epithets.
That's right.
You see him hanging out with the Canaanite woman. You see the Good Samaritan, which the Samaritans, according to that first century milieu that Christ was plopped in, they were viewed as dogs.
Yep.
You see him hanging out with divorced women.
Because they were half-breeds.
Yeah, and so you got Christ giving incredible examples of grace and mercy and love and what it means to be a Christian by utilizing an example of a different people group whom everybody back then that was part of that voodoo gang was supposed to hate. See Christ rocking up and ministering to women. Matter of fact, I think the first person to ever preach the gospel to all of his unbelieving disciples was Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. So I don't see anywhere in the Bible where anybody who claims to be a Christian, follower of Christ, can remotely try to prop up, their race is better than somebody else's.
Somebody tried it. Peter tried it.
Yeah.
Peter was like, hey, and Peter wasn't, look, man, Peter preached, you know this, but Peter preached, he's the first one to preach the gospel to the non-Jews. To the Gentiles. He's the first one. He did it. And then he supported it, backed it up. Everybody accepted it. Then Paul comes and finds Peter sitting with the Jews, not with the Gentiles, but not just sitting with them, sitting in agreement in appearance.
Right.
So even though, here's something I think is important. Even though he doesn't believe it, he's holding the appearance of it to please other people. And this is the leader of the church. So what does Paul do? He goes, well, everybody has their own opinion. That's not what he does. Paul gets in his face and in his business in front of everybody and lights that dude up. And what does Peter do? He changes. You know why? Because it's not acceptable in the New Testament. It's not Christ-like. It's not biblical. In no way does the Bible support racism.
Yeah. There's neither what? Jew nor Greek, slave or free, male or female. Remember that passage?
Remember.
And not only you can't find it in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Man, you take a stroll through Paul's epistles, the other writers of the New Testament, not a scintilla of racism evidence that you can find without the reader, looking through his bizarre, cloudy, biased goggles, twisting the scripture like a Gumby doll. It does not exist. So if you're listening to us in the Warriors and Wildmen podcast, and you think that we're going to be down with some kind of racist bullshit because, we are conservative and libertarian and in our political
because
bent.
I'm white, so I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'm going to blow that up right in about 5 minutes.
Right, and you're wearing black T-shirts and you're all tatted up and stuff. So, supposedly Rich has got to be a racist. No, we don't hold it.
Have to be.
We think it's crap. Our leader is Christ. It's not some kooky bastard with a pointed hat. And our leader, Jesus, says that racism from whites, racism from blacks, if it hails from another religion, if it thinks it's better than anybody else, you can't substantiate it. There's no biblical infrastructure in the New Testament. Yep. That's what we believe. So you're going to have to really torture the Bible and amputate it profusely to make it racist.
Yeah, check this out, Doug. And you know this. These are not obscure verses I'm going to bring up. These are the core of the Christian faith. Okay? Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Go therefore and make disciples of
white people only.
White people, people with money. It doesn't say that. What does it say? All nations. That's
well. What does all
great...
What does all mean in the Greek, Rich? You must understand the Greek.
I think the problem is that people start thinking that God is like us. We say all and every time, and we're full of crap. God says all, he means all. He says every time, he means every single time. He says forever, he means forever.
You know what's cool about my pastoring stint in Miami is it's a cosmopolitan place. There's not just white dudes, and I'm not anti-white. I am white. How do I know that I'm white, Rich? Well, one way I know that I'm white is that I have on my car stereo the treble turned up higher than the bass. So here I am in Miami, white dude from Texas. Our church was made up of Jamaicans, blacks, Venezuelans, Brazilians, Russians. I mean, we had a multicultural, multi-dynamic lollipop of love going over there. And, and I loved it, man.
You reached your community. Your community was made up of those people, and that's the people you got.
But why is, since the Bible doesn't promote, support in any form or fashion racism, why are Sunday mornings some of the most segregated or the most segregated day of the week, man?
Hey, that's not natural, Doug, and I believe that you have to do something intentionally to make it like that. That is not natural. Heaven's not like that. School's not like that. Work is not like that. Unless you're in a community that's predominant, if you're in a country or a city where it's predominantly one race or one group, ethnic group of people, then that's going to happen. But the church should look like the city, unless also languages. Like if you have a church that's in Spanish, obviously you're going to get Hispanic people. So I get that. But if you're reaching a community, your church should look like your community. What do you have to do to keep certain groups out or only to attract certain groups? That's intentional. That's not spiritual. That's man-made. Oh, back to the Bible verse. So we know the Great Commission, which is the whole purpose of the church in the earth. Jesus said, therefore, all authority in heaven and earth has been given unto me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, right? So that's what we're supposed to do, all the nations. And then we have the great commandment. And what does Jesus say? They said, what's the greatest commandment of all? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He says, and the second one is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And that doesn't mean the person living next to you. That means anybody. James chapter 2, verse 8 and 9 says this. Indeed, wrong verse. 1 John 3, 15 and 16. Anyone who hates a brother or sister is a murderer. And you know that no murder has eternal life. Anyone who hates another human being. What does the Bible say? If you say you love God, who you can't see, but you hate your brother who you can see, who's made in his image, you're a liar. So you can't, and how many people do we see that pretend to be Christians, but they're racist? And they say that's okay. And God says, but if you hate people that are made in my image, you're a liar. You don't worship me. So the reality is that biblically, there is no basis, no stand, no way you can support it. Racism is a no-go. I'm against it 100%. But I'll tell you what I'm also against. I'm also against this group of people can say whatever they want, and this group can't. Because I'm part of the group that's going to say whatever I want, and nobody's going to tell me what I can and can't say. Hashtag boom.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and I knew I was picking up on some BS when I was watching this whole Charlottesville charade go down. It looked a little too well rehearsed, kind of looked more orchestrated, Rich, than a Nancy Pelosi bowel movement to me. It's like, what are the odds that these planets, collided like this on that Saturday afternoon? And we started digging into the leader, Jason Kessler of Unite the Right, the supposed right-wing nutjob fascist dude who shops at KKK Mart. And we find out, lo and behold, Rich, it's a miracle, a Christmas miracle. This guy voted for Obama. He was an Occupy Wall Street demonstrator and activist. And then, boom, the month Trump got elected, all of a sudden he becomes a right-wing lunatic. Now, we've been told, Rich, browbeated with this, is that racism is deep-rooted. It's hard to get out, and you got to be re-educated, sometimes by Hollywood, for months. However, this guy immediately goes from crazy-ass, left-wing Occupy extremist, which I've been in the big middle of those crowds, and man, if they found out who I was when I was there in D.C., I probably would have been drawn and quartered. Here he goes from that kind of radicalism, voting for Obama, to all of a sudden, he's a Klansman that hates black people and liberals. I'm calling bullshit. We've got it up on ClashDaily.com. We expose his whole background. We got social media stuff that he said. It's, folks, we're being played. And Saul Alinsky, the liberal guru, the great organizer who wrote Rules for Radicals, and dedicated that book, Rich, to this guy, you might have heard of him before, called Lucifer, and of which Hillary Clinton said he was one of her favorite authors. Oh, and Obama taught Rules for Radicals I believe it was in Chicago University or Columbia or somewhere like
Nice.
that. Anyway, that guy has been marinating in that crap. And then all of a sudden, the deep-rooted racism that's a part of us honkies, us crackers, us white devils, immediately, quickly gets expunged within a few-month time frame to where now he is the leader of Unite the Right. Saul Alinsky said this in his book when he was trying to take down, or his acolytes and his operatives were trying to take down Herbert Walker Bush in 1972 at a university, and they wanted to oppose his pro-Vietnam War speech. They told Saul that they're going to rock up to the place and they're going to protest it and raise hell once Herbert Walker Bush starts speaking. And Alinsky said, oh, no, man. He said, you could get kicked out of school. That thing could go sideways. He says, better yet, won't you do this? Why don't you dress up like Ku Klux Klansmen, enter into the speech with big old KKK signs for Bush, and when he starts talking about and cheering for the Vietnam War, hold up your signs and say, Klansman for Bush, and that will cause more havoc. It will completely wreak more damage than anything that you could do by taking him head on. And that's exactly what Keller did to us this Saturday. We've been
But Doug, here's the problem.
Brother.
Here's the problem, Doug. People say they want the truth, but they're very selective in the truth that they want. They want the truth that already agrees with their stupid, idiotic, retarded way of thinking. And when I say retarded, I'm not talking about mentally handicapped. I'm talking about slow. They're just slow.
You're talking about Tropic Thunder type stuff.
Yeah, I'm talking
Simple
about
Jack.
I'm talking about people that watch CNN and believe it.
Yeah, look, man, I get not wanting to be a Republican. I get, conservatism's not your thing, and that, you've been a Democrat for years. Your family's been a Democrat. I get not digging on Fox News. A lot of shows on there that I don't like because I think they're being specious and disingenuous. However, as a human being, man, especially as a Christian, when we're called to love God with all of our mind, I mean, you got to be very, very skeptical. And the root word for skeptical in the Greek is skopos. You got to scope stuff out.
Yep.
You can't be so ideologically driven that you're hell-bent for whatever narrative your party is or whatever Pravda news media is putting out there. You got to think for yourself. You got to examine the facts. You could be biting into one big-ass poisonous apple.
Well,
So-
Doug, remember back in the day in college, the main thing they were trying to teach you in universities was critical thinking. You don't even hear that term anymore.
Right.
They don't
Well,
want you to be critical of anything. Just pop open the top of your head. We'll fill it with a shovel with manure. Then you open your mouth and all that crap rolls out. When people talk to me, I'm like, hey, I already read the talking points of CNN. I don't need you to repeat them to me. I saw it. Thanks. Shut up. They don't even know enough to add a thought to the garbage they repeat. And I can't handle those conversations.
So we have this massive riot supposedly by, and I'm not saying that some of those KKK clowns are not really dyed-in-the-wool white supremacists and neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Supposedly, man, we've got this big event that now the whole world is stopping and looking at, and we don't even know if the whole thing was contrived and orchestrated by big power brokers on the left, and and we're about to burn our nation down because of it. Hey, speaking of burning the nation down, Rich, I got to ask you this one. Since racism is not qualifiable in the New Testament, following Jesus, you can't hate somebody because of the color of their skin or what kind of wedding tackle that they have. What about rioting? What about vandalism?
Well,
Can you bust up stuff? Can you pull statues down from public squares and still be in the right biblically? Is there any place at all in the New Testament for you to go spray paint FU on the side of the Lincoln Memorial, or for you to get, some guy from the Confederate War in Kentucky that they memorialized with a bronze and yank that thing to the ground, for God, for righteousness?
Well, Romans chapter 13 says this: all of you must yield to the government rulers. No one rules unless God has given him power to rule, and no one rules now without the power that comes from God. So those who are against government are really against what God has commanded, and they will bring punishment on themselves. Those who do right do not have to fear rulers. Only those who do wrong fear them. Do you want to be unafraid of rulers? Then do what's right. The Bible commands that Christians obey the law. There's no way to back that up biblically. And you know what? In our country, we have the right to peaceful protest. That is not the right to break stuff, tear stuff down, burn things, and do all that garbage. That's ridiculous. That stuff is stupid. Because this might blow somebody's mind, but those things that you're burning actually belong to somebody.
You know, I might freak you out with this one, Rich. It might be a curveball. I doubt it, though. But if Christ is our blueprint, if he's, our pace car for this race we're running, then we got to follow his example and his dictates, correct? Mm-hmm. Now, given that the law does, or Romans 13 does say that, we got to obey the law, and civil magistrates don't bear that sword for nothing. There was a time, and this one might, I think this is interesting, man. There was a time when Jesus wasn't beyond kicking some ass and breaking stuff. It's in the book of John, and so I think his example of riotous behavior, because there's a time and place for everything under the sun, and we gotta make certain that it's for right reasons, and we do our protests, even riotous type stuff, in the proper context for right reasons. And I look at Christ's example in John 2:13 when it was almost time for the Jewish Passover and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle and sheep and doves and price gouging Christian DVDs and CDs and sitting at the tables exchanging money. So check this out, and again, you know this very well. So he made a whip out of cords. Okay, things just jumped up a notch, right? He drove them all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers, overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." And his disciples remembered that it was written in the Psalms, "Zeal for your house will consume me."
You. Yep.
Matthew 21 also echoes how he threw out the money changers. Those are selling pigeons. And so we do have an example of Christ going off the chain, of him doing riotous behavior, where, say somebody glams onto that text, is like, Jesus broke shit, I'm going to go break a statue. Help me define what Christ did going into that, how what he did was legit and righteous, in contrast with any kind of dull, numbnut Christian out there who's been part, whether they're on the right or the left of that melee in Charlottesville, and they still think that, man, they were in the right, man, doing what they did because Jesus tossed tables, dude, and he made a whip and started beating the punks.
That's a good perspective. I literally have never thought of it in that context before. Never even considered that.
Because you got to know somebody's glamming onto that.
Oh,
man,
somebody's got to be all about it.
Let's go break it. Off they go,
Yeah,
fueled
that's a good point.
with an imbalance of the Scripture. Here's one thing that I started pulling at this when we were getting ready and we're seeing all the Charlottesville, and I'm cobbling together a column to float it out on Clash Daily. Here are the particulars regarding how the Holy One of Israel rolled, because he didn't sin. What he did was righteous, had the Father's approval, correct?
Yes.
Or he couldn't be our Savior.
Absolutely.
And all be
Absolutely.
screwed.
Yeah, we'd be in trouble.
So here, number one, Jesus made a whip. Now, Rich, to me, this screams that he was patient, that he was methodical.
He was thinking about it. It's like when my grandma got the switch from the tree and sat there looking at me peeling the branches off of it. I think he was just letting it burn.
Yeah, and to me, that means he was, again, patient, guys, methodical, He wasn't belligerent. I mean, he was ticked because what they were doing, to the temple and to his father's house and perverting, the use of that space. He wasn't out of control. It wasn't frenzied, nut job rage that he sported. This thing, it was well thought out. He didn't just, walking down the road with him and his 12 buddies, drinking a frappuccino or something, eating a falafel from one of the bagel makers.
Eating something awful? Is that what you said?
And all of a sudden he sees, what's going on? He's known that this crap has been going on for years.
Yep.
It didn't occur every weekend. It wasn't like him and his unemployed buddies were just looking for crap to burn down. He picked a time. He made a weapon. Again, everything in order. And he went for it. But I don't see him. I don't see the people rather in Charlotte, in Baltimore, and all these other places like in Ferguson. A lot of those dudes went to church, man. And it looked like they just picked up a bottle, poured gas in it, stuffed a rag, and then threw it into the Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't see Jesus doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Jesus didn't kill him. He didn't burn the temple down. He didn't
run a chariot.
He didn't maim anybody. He didn't
the crowd.
He didn't go get
like
a car and run somebody over. Which let me just throw this out there, because I know. I mean, somebody's probably waiting, like they do with Trump. We don't support white supremacist BS. We don't support the KKK, the alt-right, these ridiculous racist idiots. We condemn everything they do. But let me throw this out there. They've been planning that thing for over a month. It was a national, quote, national. They had 300 people. You know what would have happened if nobody would have went there to oppose them? Nothing. We wouldn't be talking about it.
Right. Yeah,
let
what we
the
should do
stupid idiots get together and be stupid and leave them alone. Then let the dumb, backward, cousin-marrying idiots go back to the woods wherever they came from and be just as stupid as they were before they got there.
Yeah, ignore them. I mean, those clowns represent an infinitesimal fraction of
I don't even know anyone like that. I don't even know anyone like
Rich,
that.
Rich, you and I, we know rednecks. We hang out with rednecks. I'm around a lot of hunting camps and some swamps and Dixieland and some places that I'm telling you, I've felt a little nervous going into, just because it was so
like deliverance type stuff.
Yeah. You got a purty mouth, boy. That kind of place. And I've been around a lot of campfires with a lot of microphones removed and a lot of talk going back and forth and a couple of adult beverages under our belts, and nobody said, you know what, we ought to start a race war.
Yeah,
nobody talks
I've never
like
heard
that.
anything like that.
I don't know where the hell these people come from, and if I bump into them, I let them know, or if they try to join me up on Facebook or engage me, it's like, dude, I'm not smoking that. Again, I'm a Christian, so I'm commanded to love everybody. I'm supposed to be an example of that. So I'm going to point out BS that goes down, whether it comes out of a black person's mouth or a Hispanic or the Asian or a Muslim or a Christian or a white cracker.
Well, how about
crap
this?
is crap, no matter how you frame it.
How about this, Doug? So they want to condemn all this stuff and they want to call it terrorism, which it wasn't terrorism. They didn't go to a public place and plan an event and get a car and go run somebody. That's a stupid, psychotic, probably a racist idiot that got fired up and got his car and ran some people over. Try not to equate that with Islamic terrorism. And then we talk about Black Lives Matter. We talk about these guys. Let's talk about all the things that they have done.
Yeah, like shooting 5 cops in Dallas.
Oh no, that
Obama didn't say anything
terrorism.
about it. It's like, well, he was a mentally disturbed person, had nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. Look over there. It's
come to the White House. Let's have a beer.
Right. And all the times with the Robert Gates case where he disparaged the cops immediately, they acted stupidly.
Yep.
So anyway, going back to the riotous stuff, here's another couple of things I want to talk over with you, which I find, again, fascinating, because Jesus was a rioter. Let me rephrase that. Jesus threw down and cleared out a building one time.
Yep.
So not only was he methodical and patient, and not belligerent, just trying to grab something and start beating people with it. He only vandalized the evil son of a bitch's stuff that were desecrating God's house. Please note, he didn't morph into a crazy vandal. He focused just on the people that were making merchandise in the house. It wasn't, there's a Starbucks.
Wait,
there's a Bank of America.
You mean the riots in Ferguson didn't follow his model? Like when they went across the street and burned down the businesses of the people from their own community? Yeah,
I don't get that. These people are bad. Cops suck. Let's light our home on fire. Wait. So, number 3, Jesus didn't steal stuff after condemning
he didn't?
The Pharisees' actions. Like,
he didn't run in and steal a bunch of pairs of tennis shoes and get out of there because he's tired of wearing sandals?
He's like, man, I like that cow. I'm going to take that cow home. That thing looks like a breeder. Looks like a breeder. Peter, grab the rope. Get that cow. Hey, Bartholomew, quit playing the damn piano and grab those pigeons, man. We're going to have a barbecue tonight. And, forget the pig.
Wait, you mean when he flipped the tables and scattered the coins? His 12 disciples weren't picking the coins up and packing up the tables?
For a tithe and offering, of course. Yeah, again, he didn't steal the stuff after condemning their actions. Hello, people. So you can't point, well, Jesus, man, he rioted and he got all cantankerous and stuff and he started breaking things, and it's like, yeah, but he didn't steal crap. He didn't he only vandalized the tables of the money changers. So that's a wee bit different than the antics that you're engaged in.
Yep, exactly.
And another thing is that, he had a clear biblical mandate that God's house is to be a house of prayer, and zeal for its purity drove that legitimate wrath.
Yep, it consumed him. It wasn't like, whatever. It wasn't like, I don't have a job and nothing to do. I think I'm going to go down there and throw some rocks.
Like Ernest T.
Hey,
Bass.
What are you going to do today? I don't know. Bring a bat. Let's go down and get on TV.
Yeah, he wasn't some rapscallion like Ernest T. Bass on the Andy Griffith Show that go around throwing rocks through windows, and Gomer and Barney had to chase his ass all around Mayberry and stuff.
You know what? One of my favorite things, though, is that the cops didn't do anything. And then I saw the chief of something, I don't know, saying, don't mistake inactivity with passivity.
It's like, that's kind of the definition of
those words are interchangeable. You know that, right? Like, what school did you not go to? So the awesome thing about that is he says, if we would have engaged, people would have got hurt. Hey, genius, somebody died.
Duh. Yeah.
19 people went to the hospital there.
Because you didn't engage.
Mathematician. Glad you didn't engage.
What do you think that pistol's for, and that nightstick and that taser? I think it's to hurt people. It's like you quoted earlier.
What's the word that comes after law? Law and what?
Order.
Order. Oh, my bad. I thought that was their job. And then it's to serve and...
serve and play? Serve and watch?
What? Serve and eat donuts?
It's a P word. It's a P word.
It's protect.
Protect, that's it.
Here we go. Oh, they forgot those things. You know why? Because they were political pawns.
Yeah,
they were ordered to stand by and watch this thing go down and then they want to get on there and go, we were protecting people. You weren't doing jack. You were standing there watching people violently clash.
Not only that, but if you watched one of the videos closely from this past weekend, is that they started pushing the frickin' neo-Nazis into the anti-fascist people. It's like... Look, you don't have to be a wizard to understand, well, there's probably going to be some noggins starting to get knocked.
Hey, check this out.
Look, Rich, if I was a cop, I would have got in there and said, listen, you rednecks, take your sleeveless T-shirts and your and your KKK signs, and trust me on this, you better beat a path and go that way. In the meantime, me and Barney, we're going to push the Antifa crowds farther and farther away. You made your point.
Here's another thing.
Have a nice day.
They had a permit to have their assembly, set up barriers, and tell them anybody who crosses that barrier is going to jail right now. And the second somebody does it, drag them off in the zip ties and throw them in the paddy wagon.
You know what I'd do if I was Charlottesville police officer and the captain who might be politically tied into the mayor or whatever, and Terry McAuliffe, governor, who's definitely no friend of Trump. If I was in my morning brief, Rich, and they said, all right, today we got a protest down at that old Robert E. Lee Memorial. We got a couple hundred neo-Nazis coming in all over the state, going to protest its removal. In addition, we've learned that the Black Lives Matter and the anti-fascist and BAM and Black Bloc are going to rock up here with sticks with nails in them. We want you to just stand by, stand down, not interfere or intervene. If I was a cop, it's like, well, can you repeat that phrase? What we're supposed to do? Did you say we're not supposed to interfere? That we're supposed to stand down? You know what? You can take this badge and this Glock and you can shove it up your ass, because that's not what I signed in for. That sounds like chaos. That's not serving and protecting. And politics. I quit, and I'm going to go to Costco to see if I can get a managerial job.
There you go.
I wouldn't stand by and watch that, man. It's like you said, people died because of that.
And police are dying because we're playing politics with the police, and it's costing people their lives. It's not acceptable. This stuff's crazy. I was watching the news last night. I try not to, but I couldn't help it. And this one guy said, well, the reason they didn't have more officers there and why they didn't do anything is because to do that, they would have had to pull officers off the streets from other areas. See how brilliant he is? They would have had to pull other officers off the streets from other areas, and crime would increase. Did you watch the video? Crime was on full display there, genius. They're rocket scientists. Watch this. This is a crazy thing. Here's a war. It's really hot right here. Let's send most of our people over there. Oh, wait. You're a police officer who thinks the best thing to do is stand by. And look, I'm not bagging on cops. Cops got a tough job. I know a lot of great cops. This wasn't their call. But these guys that are making these excuses and stuff, get out of here with that garbage, man. Nobody wants to hear that.
I think that, again, if I was a cop, I'd push back. I'd quit.
Yep.
And I had cops, when we posted that sentiment on Clash Daily and put it over on the fan page, I had other cops saying, I'd frickin' resign immediately. You're not going to get me to, all right, well, I'm just going to put on blinders here and hit delete.
Let's do this with firefighters. Man, there's this massive fire over here. Call the firefighters. Oh, no.
There might be a fire breaking out.
We want to keep these guys over there in case somebody's stove catches on fire. We don't want all of our firefighters fighting a big fire that is happening. We want some people on standby in case something might happen. Because, see, those are smart people.
Complete bullshit. And anybody who believes that, what's that catchy phrase in that song? Then I got some oceanfront property in Arizona for you.
Yep, I love that one.
Here's another one that I find interesting in Jesus's riotous behavior in John chapter 2 is that Christ didn't cleanse the temple incognito. He wasn't anonymous. He didn't have on a little.
He didn't have a bandana over his face.
He didn't have some weird ass mask. No bandana on the face. No hoodie. Didn't have shades. Who is that? I don't know. It kind of looks like Jesus. Well, I can't really tell. He's got a hoodie and he's got some shades on. To me, people who do that, Rich, you're a nutless wonder. If you're so bold, if you're so right, then like Jesus, frickin' represent, man. Stand up and be counted.
Yeah, let's see your face.
Yeah, they
do the deal.
Again, it's they're doing the dirty deeds in secret. So, Christian, if you're thinking about donning mask and little hoodie jacket today, or this weekend, and going to some other place where there's some Confederate dude who's been immortalized in bronze, don't put on a disguise. Do it like Christ did, and be loud and proud. No nuts.
Well, I was watching a video yesterday from a Fox interview from a couple ladies, black ladies, and their names are Diamond and Silk. I think they're on YouTube. They're
so
blowing
great,
it up.
Man. So great.
Conservative. Man, I watched that and I was like, man, that's really good. And they asked one of the ladies, they said, what do you think about the removal of the Robert E. Lee? And she said, Well, I think it should be taken down. I don't have a problem. And put in a museum, because don't let the Democrats ever forget what they've done to this country.
Exactly.
And I was
Boom!
like, whoa. I was like, no wonder she's a YouTube phenomenon and I'm not.
Yeah. No, and for our uneducated listeners to the Warriors and Wildmen podcast, it was the Democrats predominantly, I'm talking about the vast majority that were slave owners. Wasn't Republicans. Republicans the one that did away with it. Also, you know that frosty little group, the Ku Klux Klan? Yeah, Democratic spawned stuff. It wasn't Republicans, it wasn't conservatives, it wasn't libertarians, it was Democrats.
You know what their argument's going to be, Doug? You know what they're going to say?
That was back then, man.
But back then, the Democrats were really the Republicans. And the Republicans are really... It's like, my mind can't handle truth. So what I do is it's like evolution. I push it way back in the past, and then I say stupid stuff because it makes sense a long time ago.
Or they'll say, they'll say, well, we just agree to disagree, man, and that's your truth, and I have my truth.
Okay, then how about this? Let's agree to disagree. Don't freaking touch me. We'll agree to disagree with anybody they want. This is the whole deal. Don't touch anybody. Keep your idiotic, violent self to yourself. Keep your hands, your weapons to yourself. Yell and scream all you want. Stay out of my face. Don't violate my personal space. Don't make me feel threatened. And not just me, because I know this is the next thing we were going to talk about, is freedom of speech. Because I had a guy on Twitter say, these pastors aren't standing up for what's right, and they're talking about freedom of speech. And my thing is this. Look, what those neo-Nazi, idiot, white supremacist, bleep, 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 you can fill in the blanks for me, Doug. Those guys, what those guys stand for, they're a bunch of stupid idiots. But you know what? What they did is morally wrong. It's a sin. It's not a crime. The danger is when we make our opinions and our speaking a crime. What's Kathy Griffin does the whole Donald Trump chop the head off thing of, you know, and that whole thing. It wasn't a crime, but our society functioned how it should, and we punished her for it. As a society, not a law. I would have never supported for her to be censored. I would have never supported for her to be put in jail or fined. I disagree with that. She's allowed to be as stupid as she wants publicly, but the whole nation said that's not acceptable. And as a culture, we said this is morally wrong. So we punished her as a culture, not as a crime. So you should be able to say whatever you want. That's not illegal, because here's the problem. Hate speech and all that stuff. Let people speak hate. It's legal. It's immoral, but it's legal. We're not going to legislate righteousness. We're not going to say that what you did is wrong. Now you're going to jail because you said something I disagree with, because that sword cuts both ways. We start using that and say, you can't speak racism. Now it's going to come back on us, and they're going to say, we can't speak for the family, and a man married to a woman is marriage because now it's hate speech. And it's going to become illegal to be Christians, and the stupid Christians that are backing this garbage up, they're the ones that are setting the way for what a lot of people believe is going to be the persecution in the United States. That's where we're at.
Yeah, wait till like has happened in Western Europe and Canada, to where chunks of the Bible are deemed hate speech, and they're illegal. And
Exactly.
these Christians want to hold steadfast to the verbum Dei and the total gospel and all the great things that the Bible espouses for us human clods. And then all of a sudden, their championing, quote unquote, hate speech laws gets turned and shoved down their throat and up their tailpipe. Hello,
Exactly.
moron. Hey, look, man, there's a lot of things that people say constantly that offends me. I honestly, I love it. I love the fact that we're living in a free society where people can rip on me, rip on my ideals, rip on the scripture even. People's like, well, they shouldn't be able to say that about Jesus. Like, hey, look, man, Jesus is a big boy. He can take care of him. He's got thin or thick skin. So let them say whatever they want. I don't give a rat's ass. Let Hollywood do the most blasphemous movies known to mankind. As long as I'm not forbidden to ridicule the crap out of it on Warriors and Wildmen podcast, I don't care.
Doug, you can say whatever you want. And guess what? I can say whatever I want about what you said. I don't have to agree with you. If I think it's stupid, I can say that's stupid. If I think it's blasphemous, I can say that's blasphemous. If I think that it's immoral and wrong, I can say that. If I say something that you don't like, you can say that's stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's freedom of speech, man. If we take that away, what do we have?
We got nothing.
They're going to shut the church down.
Yeah,
they're paving the way. This is intentional. Just like you said, the riot was intentional. They set it up. They're on a program, and people are too blind to see it.
We're about to post this on Clash Daily, trying to make certain all of our sources are correct, but they're coming after the Alamo in Texas. They want to reimagine the Alamo in that epic battle in 1836 for Texas independence because it offends certain people.
Hey, guess what? Real life's offensive. You want to know something? Jesus, which people say, I don't believe in Jesus. You can't not believe in Jesus. You can say, I don't believe in Napoleon. That's stupid. He existed. He's the most written about person who's ever lived in the history of the world. There's more evidence of the life and death of Jesus than anyone who has ever lived. And Jesus impacted the world in 3 short years more than any person has ever lived. You can say whatever you want, but you can't change the facts. The truth is the truth. And you know what? What they did to Jesus is offensive. And the fact that Jesus laid his life down for people is offensive. The cross is offensive. You know what, Doug? The truth is offensive. The Bible's at least rated R.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to live in a non-offensive place. I like the fact that the God that I serve offends me greatly. Well,
regularly.
Man, when I read the Bible, people are like, well, I was talking to this dude one time in Miami. He goes, well, what you just read offends me. It's like, dude, I'm in the same crap sling that you are. I'm a human.
It offended me too.
It definitely whizzes on a lot of parades. I'd like to be the troubadour in. Hey, Rich, a couple other things, and then we'll sign off. Jesus didn't make a living off grievance-based temple tossing like Al Sharpton. He didn't form a non-profit and go around making life miserable for everyone he thought he sucked. He acted alone, didn't have a massive posse, and there are only 2 examples of him ever engaging in that kind of stuff. And that's how, Rich, if we're going to be Christians, if those who supposedly claim, this weird kind of aberrant white supremacy stuff, and they confess to be believers, well, I'm sorry, Bubba, but you've got to hold to Christ being the example. Same thing with the kooks on the left. If you're some kind of hipster Christian who hates Trump and stuff, and you claim Christ as your Savior and your Lord, well, sorry, but you've got to also toe that holy line. And that's my final word. Rich, what would you have to say to the youngsters, the young squabs listening to Warriors and Wildmen?
I would say that we need to start to see people for the God in people, even people that don't know God yet. We need to change our mind about how we think about people. Racism, it is a serious thing. And if people have that inside of them, they need to deal with it. You can't say you love God and you hate people that are made in the image of God. That doesn't make sense. Now, some people give you a reason to be mad at them. We're commanded to also pray for even our enemies. And so, if you're a Christian, you're in a catch-22, baby. You got to be like Jesus. You can't make an excuse for being flawed. You can't say, well, nobody's perfect. Well, guess what? We're still commanded to be perfect. So what we have to do is we have to look at the situation and say, you know what? And this is really, really Christian point of view right here. We need to look at all this and say, what is God doing in the middle of this? Maybe some of it we need to examine ourselves and find out what our attitudes are, the way we talk and treat people. But we also need to look and see where our nation's going, and we can't be blind to the truth. Don't just watch the news and accept it. Read the Bible. See what's going on. And you know what? We need to start loving people and making a difference, because the answer is not more hate, which I'm not one of those people who's, haters, But the answer is not more hate and getting fired up about it. The answer is to go and love people and be better. Let's be better. Let's be an example. And I don't care if you're white and you're a racist or you're black and you're a racist and it's wrong. And don't give me the garbage that you're a Christian and it's okay because this person, the Bible says, love your enemies, pray for those spitefully use you and hurt you. That's what Jesus said. So that's the way it goes. So if we're going to do it, let's do it. If you're not going to do it, shut up.
Warriors and Wildmen podcast, that's a wrap. Rich, what do the listeners need to do, my friend?
They need to go and download Warriors and Wildmen, subscribe, sign up, review it. Tell us if you love it. Tell us if you think we suck. If you do, a couple people have, and I talk back to them. Some guy, I don't know if you saw it, Doug, but he said he's a millennial, and he said he could whip either one of us. And I told him, well, I looked at his page. I said, the first thing you need to do is, number one, you need to whip life. So as soon as you get a job, you move out of your mom's house, let me know when you want to get in that fight. The second thing that I find ironic is that your profile picture is a cat.
Yeah.
So you should probably read my friend's book, Pussification, the Effeminization of the American Male. Go and subscribe, sign up, review, tell us. We'll talk crap to you. We'll talk about you. You can come and talk to us online. This is what we do.
Yeah, also, gosh, what was I going to say, Rich? I'm blanking out. Oh, I remember. Play this podcast to your youth group, to your college group. Bunch of Christians gathered together. This is great, man. You're talking about rioting. You're talking about racism. And we jacked Jesus into that equation. You guys deal with it, talk about it, send us what you came up with. Forgive my language. I told you I had the mouth of a stevedore, but you know what? My heart.
I don't even know what that is, but you got it.
You gotta look it up, man. Always increase your vocabulary. Hey, thanks, guys. WarriorsandWildmen.com. Follow us. Do everything that Rich said. Peace out.